This is exactly what makes me feel comfortable coming from a cybersecurity company to show my personal computer to the whole class. So, what I'm going to talk to you about, and please feel free to ask questions, and what we agreed we're going to do is to talk about one security trend that our company, BHC Lab, is involved in. And it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's getting sort of more and more attention. And I think this is just something from the programming point of view we should also be looking at. When I was talking about two audiences, we are actually having several. One of them. So we have one of the audiences that we talked this story is the programmers, security experts. Another track are the lawyers. Then there are strategic decision makers, politicians, and all those people. And when I thought, if this is the presentation that would be good for this audience and for this particular conference, then really this presentation is not good for any of those conferences, in any of those auditoriums, because that is part of the security problem now. It is, and what I'm talking about is the problem with cyber security at the strategic level. And this is something that we are struggling with, and that actually trying to provide solutions to. What we do are cybersecurity exercises for people who have no idea about cyber. In fact, who hate cyber, who hate numbers. I hate numbers too. I'm a lawyer by education. I went to study math. I went to study law because I hate math. I thought that when I went to law school, I have never do math again in my life. The first class that I had to take was accounting for lawyers. The second one was basic programming. And then we had corporate finance and mergers and acquisitions, and I realized that this would never end, and I just accepted. And my mother tells me that I shouldn't tell people that I hate math because that's not a very polite thing to say, but I'm saying that anyway. To the exercises. I want to talk to you about the exercises that we have been carrying out for last 2 years, 3 years now, at the very top strategic level. And our goal is quite simple, actually. To build interface between technical personnel, highly sophisticated, intelligent, smart people who operate at technical level in cybersecurity, and political or strategic level. Highly sophisticated, smart, intelligent people who operate at that level. Part of the security problem today, more and more, the more security questions pop up, they are not confined at the technical level. They are very much now part of the mainstream security discussion. They are very much now part of the mainstream security decisions. And very often we find ourselves in situations where people take decisions on security, having no idea about what they are deciding. And there are various myths and misconceptions and problems that they actually have to struggle with. And our job is, with these exercises, we have taken it our mission to try to figure out and look into the heads of those strategic decision makers and try to figure out what is going on there. And can we somehow help them? And also vice versa, to make technical people, technical security people, to understand some of those considerations, how some of the decisions are taken, how some of the people, what is the logic that those people follow, and why they are doing one or another thing. And always when we start our exercises, we start from a very, very old war story. We take them back to the gates of Troy. This is the picture that everyone knows. There's a wooden horse parked in front of the gates of Troy, and the Trojan people have to take a decision whether to accept it or not. It was brought by Greeks who had for 3-4 weeks had the city under siege without any success. The Greeks thought that, we have to come up with some sort of rules. This is what they planned. And now the Trojans have to take a decision. It's a security dilemma. It's a security decision that we are faced, and we are faced with such security decisions every day. And those strategic decision makers in cybersecurity are faced with those Trojan horses every day. We all know what happened with Troy. It was a tragedy. The city got destroyed. But what I think compounds the tragedy, what makes the tragedy even greater, is the fact that those decision makers had the right choice in front of them. It was put forward by Lauri, a Trojan priest, a programmer, for our purposes of discussion, an intelligence officer, a person possessing supreme technical knowledge for the purposes of that event, who said, don't accept this gift. It's a ruse by the Greeks. And now what did the Trojans decide? And we all know what did they decide. They decided to put the issue on national vote, and very emotionally, on the national vote, they decided to accept the gift of horse. The city was destroyed. The lesson learned for us, and this is basically where we have built our exercise, and it's an interesting picture. It's taken at the Vatican Gardens, where the statue of good old Lauri is located. And this is a picture we have actually made a lot of money with, because this is what we use always in our sales pitches when we advertise our cybersecurity exercises for strategic decision makers. And what we have to recognize is sometimes having a right technical solution in front of us is not the answer to a security problem. Equally important is the decision-making framework we submit that technical solution. And I think this is one of the key aspects with dealing with today's security problems. We are not at the ages where cybersecurity was only at the purview of few devoted few. We are more and more seeing that the cyber is discussed at the very strategic level. The decisions are taken at a very high level with a very general understanding of the issue, me included. And so we need to deal with this, and we somehow find the way to build interface. So this is what we do. We have done, this is what I want to discuss. We have done several strategic exercises, and so what we do is we go to countries and we talk to governments, and we put the governments through a lifelike major cyber crisis scenario where we try to play through as many cyber threats as possible, and then see how they react. That's always a challenge, because those cybersecurity exercises and those those scenarios and stuff, the problem is that very often they get stuck. People start to question the reality, is that really possible? They come back and forth with all kinds of technical questions. We don't want to see that happen in our exercises. So what we thought is we need to find some sort of model that we can actually measure what is going on in the heads of those decision makers. And this is where we build our technical solution around. The sort of the brain model of a strategic decision maker. What is going on in the brain of those strategic decision makers? And the model that we use is my brain, because for some period of time, 5 years, I served as permanent Secretary of Defense in Estonian Defense Ministry. And the period coincided with 2007 cyber attacks that Estonia suffered, which to me was sort of an awakening moment. So pretty much we have used that experience, and also some of the experience of my colleagues when I go and discuss and when we look at the things that we are worried about. So the model that we use, we call the Lauri dilemmas. This is basically the way to get the lock on behind the table at the decision-making process, but in a way that we can actually, somehow model that. In building those exercises technically, we have said that we are basically looking at 4 dilemmas, 4 problems that strategic decision makers are mostly concerned with. And if you submit an actual technical problem in front of them, that has nothing to do with the actual technical solution that you might have or that the security staff might have. It is completely these are problems that are completely out of the picture from the technical point of view, but nevertheless, they are relevant. One of the first problems that they have to deal with, and that we have to deal with at the strategic level, and where we have a complete misconception when we talk about technical stuff, is the concept of time. The concept of time in the world of technology and the concept of time in the world of in the brains of the strategic decision makers who actually have to take decisions in those situations is completely different. And that makes sometimes building the interface and actually addressing the issues very, very different. And this is the thing that we start with these exercises. The last exercise that we did was to the top government officials in Portugal. We have done it to the top government officials in Estonia, naturally. We have done it in Georgia, the country. We have done it in Czech Republic. We've done it to a number of American audiences in a lighter version. And we have done it in several other countries outside the European Union. Next year, we have scheduled to do at least 5 or 6 of those strategic exercises to various governments. And the first thing, when we post them with scenarios, is the issue of time and the requirement to react fast. Very often what the strategic decision makers do not realize that poses a really serious security problem is the concept of time. They do not realize how fast we actually need to react. They think that 10 minutes is enough. They think that 10 or 15 or 5 minutes is a really fast reaction time, and that gets us into problems. Coming from those exercises, we have seen that they want to push the reaction extremely fast, but they really cannot do it and connect with the reality in this area. I have many examples. So what we do is we post them with various issues, and we ask them various questions. And one of the questions that we ask is, how fast do you react to that situation? And they say we react very fast. 90%, 85% of the participants say, we react to a particular situation immediately. What does it really mean is absolutely unclear. So when we go through the lessons learned, they say that we actually didn't realize that. So one of the questions, one of my favorite scenarios that we use now is the scenario of ransomware. A hospital in a country that we call homeland is infected with ransomware. And the particular part of the database that is infected has to deal with the allergies of all the patients. So we have lives at stake. If we cannot get it, and there are injections about to be done, there are surgeries about to start. If we don't do it, the patients may actually die, but doctors cannot get access to the database dealing with the allergies. So the issue is, do you pay? And one of the issues is, how fast can you take this decision? And what the guy says, we do it immediately. So putting the time frame very, very far out there in direction, but if we start asking other questions, then we see that that is actually quite difficult to achieve. Another problem that we deal with those exercises is the issue of how far can we see with the security planning. And again, another problem that is completely non-technical but has huge technical implications is that these people like to make plans. They like to make plans, ignoring completely the technological cycle. And in cyber, the cycle is extremely fast. The way of planning in average bureaucratic organization in a country goes like this. Long-term plan is for 10 years. And this is how decisions, money, budget is planned in large numbers. The mid-range plan or the midterm plan is for 5 years, which is an enormously long time in technology development. I think the Symantec report on the threats that was issued 4 years ago, what described the threat picture outlook, completely ignored the issue of iPhones and the expansion of threats coming from the use of iPhones. They completely ignored it. So the problem in the security and strategic decision-making, again, thing that we need to exercise with these people is the issue of that they must get used to the fact that they cannot see very far. That they need to be agile, that they need to be actually reacting very, very fast in real-time scenarios. And sometimes, again, this is very, very difficult to achieve. So you have that on the other side of the cycle. So this is the timeline, this is the fast, and this is the slow, or yeah, let's say far. Another issue that we have is the issue of transparency. And the issue that we ask is that, is your decision secret or is it public? The issue of transparency in the security discussion is absolutely fundamental. And another thing, and sort of another factor that needs to be exercised and that needs to be paid attention to and dealt with. And you know what is the 90%, same scenario, hospital, ransomware, government, do you pay? Now we ask the next question. Is the decision secret or public? And you know what the answer is? In 90% of the cases in those scenarios, Portugal, Estonia, Georgia, United States, they always want to put it here, top secret. It's a government discussion, it's a terrorist policy, and we need to classify it. So what you have here immediately is an enormous tension. They say that we need to react very fast because the patients are going to die, and they want to do it in secret. The highest secrecy level in NATO, at least one of the highest secrecy levels in NATO, is called Cosmic Top Secret, ATOMAL, but let's forget it. Okay, one of the highest is Cosmic Top Secret NATO. And above top secret knowledge, which means that this information has to be gathered by a human agent, by another NATO country, that can be shared within the NATO community. This is the sort of the definition of that level of classified information. Now let's say that this human agent has the password in another NATO country to decrypt that information. And we now need to give that over to that hospital. We need to do that in secret. We have tested it in NATO. And we need to, they say we need to act very fast, in 5, 3, or 10 minutes. We measured that in the exercises. Do you know how long it takes to give over NATO Cosmic Top Secret information from one party to another so that we actually declassify it in the process? It takes 3 years. So it's a significant amount of time. And it puts us somewhere here in real terms. So the consequence is, and then one of the things that we want to communicate to those, to the participants and everybody, is that secrecy is not always comfortable. And if you put things to that end, you actually are putting an enormous pressure to this part. The other issue that where we measure the exercises is the issue of alliances. And here we talk about, who are our cooperation partners, with whom we actually need to take decisions, and with whom we actually need to work with. Again, what is very often misconstrued, and again, 90% of the participants at the strategic level, are you going to pay, or how are you going to solve one or another particular problem? They are going to say, when we ask, is this a sovereign decision? Is this a national decision? Or is it an international decision? They say that this is a national decision. Again, putting quite an enormous pressure to this end of the matrix. National decision in cybersecurity is almost non-existent. The threat is very much international. I think you know that, but just in case, a quiz question: what was the country that attacked Estonia the most last year, statistically? USA. Egypt. Well, it was Egypt because probably their defenses are their weakest, and it was used as a proxy. We need to find a way to reach out to Egypt. If it was USA, we have pretty good relationship with USA, with FBI, with all those other people sitting at the Fort Meade and everywhere, and we can work it out. But the problem is Egypt. Who do we call in Egypt? The very first strategic exercise at EU level that I was involved in, that happened in 2010. I was asked to be part of a team that drafted the first EU pan-European strategic decision-making exercise. I went there, sitting in the working group, and I sort of thought out my best scenario that I can to really have a good scenario and impress people and look good, but also be interesting for the participants. And when I sort of voiced some of my ideas that we might use, people said, whoa, 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 whoa. Not that fast. The first ever European exercise was about a very simple scenario. The scenario went, there is a cyber incident, and it's a true story. There is a cyber incident somewhere in Europe. You need to contact another EU country. Who do you call? That was the scenario. And it made a lot of sense, because at that time it turned out EU did not have the exchange points agreed between each other. And to a large extent, those exchange points are not working today either, because there is one very fundamental thing about this, and it has to deal with the trust of the participants. There is a lot of informal stuff going on in cyber, and more so than in any other security area. We are very comfortable allowing tanks in the country, and very comfortable to exchanging all kinds of classified information in the networks. But when it comes to cyber, we are not so comfortable, and there are many reasons for that. One of the reasons has to deal with partly about alliances, partly about transparency, and it is this very interface question. Sometimes at the technical level, we do not very well understand what the strategic decision makers want, what is important for them, and some of the different issues, and what is important to them sometimes differs technically. When Estonia was attacked in 2007, and this is a war story I don't want to repeat too much, but because the problem is with old war stories that they are old, and then they tend to get more interesting every year, and then farther from the truth. But one of the issues one of the examples that I always bring is, when I went to CERT, after we did the lessons learned process, and I asked Hillar Aarelaid, who was head of the technical section at that time, from how many computers, can you tell from how many computers Estonia was attacked from during those attacks? The guys at the CERT started to laugh. They said, Lauri is stupid. He doesn't know how to ask questions. It's not a valid technical question, because various computers have various amount of computing power. So it doesn't make any technical sense to ask that question. It resulted me yelling, saying that I still want to have this knowledge, because I wanted to have it from the strategical point of view. I wanted to be able to use it in a political talking point and not technical talking point to actually achieve certain other strategic result, to display, to build that botnet from how many individual crimes or acts of basically trespass or tort you had to commit to achieve that end. And that's a political statement, and it has nothing to do with computing power. 2 million computers, they were managed to count the botnet up to 2 million computers. They said maybe it was 1, but you can use 2, from 175 countries. So that was a political talking point, and it actually brought home quite a lot of good results. So, and then, and only then, when we have looked at those issues of time, when we have looked at the issues of transparency, when we have looked at the issues of alliances, which, by the way, have to deal a lot with the issues of private sector. How do we work together with the private sector? Because 90% of the infrastructure is owned by the private sector. So the illusion of us deciding some of the things nationally is absolutely, let's say, the thinking that we can decide some of the things nationally is an absolute illusion. Because a lot of those things is getting to be decided privately. Only then we are going to measure the things at the authority level. Who takes this decision in this particular security situation? The issue is the same. You have the hospital at the ransomware. You need to decide who to pay, and you know what the 90% of the people answer in those exercises. 90% of the people answer that the decision has to be taken at the highest political level. Where in fact, I think the issue in cybersecurity is actually how can we find the lowest common denominator? How can we delegate the decisions as low as possibly, as low as we possibly can, so that we can actually allow some of those things that we have recognized that we need. So what happens? In those exercises, always happens that we build those two arches that I tend to call this one a feel-good arch. So this is where our instinct at the strategic level always goes, and this is what messes things up in the security. And it builds considerable tension. So they say that they push that we need to do things very, very fast, but at the same time we need to do them at a very classified level, and they realize and they think that we can do them at the national level because that makes us feel good, it's our decision. And also what makes us feel good is when the government, when the prime minister or president can take the decision. And it pushes this sort of the decisions little bit out there. And here is, tough to do. Here is sort of tough to do, and how can we achieve this arch? How can we achieve that actually we know and have some sort of perspective of what kind of security decisions and what kind of technology developments await us long ahead? How can we achieve a good international cooperation that we can actually go and call to Egypt and find out who is behind those attacks really? How can we achieve so that we forget this urge to classify information so much? And how can we have a way of discussing things comfortably? One of the good, and actually, have a meaningful discussion. One of the things that we do in our company is also penetration testing and resilience testing and things like that. We are working with experimental technology and algorithmic DDoS attack It doesn't use a botnet, but it uses an algorithm that tries to exploit weaknesses in the system so that it would actually take down systems. We are using 66 patterns because we don't need any more. All our targets have sort of given up. And some of them are most sophisticated, without leaving any logs, without leaving any patterns. It's a 0-day capability. We were approached by an intelligence agency of a foreign country, who said, it's a public story, I can share this. We were approached by an intelligence agency of one country saying that there's another country where suicide terrorists are recruited, and we would like to take the website down. Do you have a capability for that? I said, maybe we would like to go and look into the website, see who is signing up. We could do that. They said, no, we want to take the website down. I said, okay, we can do it. But then when we started to look at the issue, can we actually do it? Can we export that kind of technology? Then the issues of secrecy and publicity started to kick in. And the problem is that because we don't have in this area a comfortable way of discussing about these things, like 0-day export of 0-day attack capabilities, we actually, again, are building this illusion that things are comfortable, easy, and safe. The illusion of safety. Because the government denies that we are, involved in things like that, because we do not have a comfortable way of discussing about these capabilities, we do not have a form in our export control authority that we could fill out in order to even apply for the export license. We simply don't have it because the capability does not exist. It's here somewhere, where it should be here. And what happens with this is that we are losing the control. Secrecy is is the easiest way to lose control over what is happening, because we don't do it because we are a sort of whitelist company. We would like to deal with government. We are involved in security issues, and of course we didn't sell that particular technology. But if you think that there is a company in the world, in the wide world, because the website is not up anymore, and if you think that someone did not sell it, then you're of course mistaken. Somebody, somewhere, maybe even in this room, is able to do it and sell it. But because we don't have a comfortable way of discussing about it with the government, because we don't have a comfortable way of actually finding a way to export the technology, we have actually lost control over the technology. And it's not a good thing. And finally, yes, how we can take those things down from the government and trust the people over here and find a comfortable pattern. That's another thing. So we don't know. So what we do, last 2 minutes, the exercise works exactly like this. The visualization is exactly like this, a little bit better drawn as I have done. So what we do is we ask all those same questions on every exercise scenario. We have divided the exercises into 5 or 4 or 6 different working groups. And every working group actually has to assess, is the decision secret? Who takes the decision? Is it, how far does it, how long does it take? And, is it a national or international decision? And then we can actually go and draw a picture what is going in the head of the decision makers. In an ideal world, various working groups that consist of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Office, legal and justice, intelligence and defense, and private sector, the picture should be the same. We should be knowing what we are doing in a crisis in that particular situation. But what happens is that the pictures are very different from sector to sector. So what we can say, at least, putting a little bit of science into here, is that where the differences are the greatest between working groups, we can actually see those problems emerge. And this is our way to finding probably solutions. And then one more thing that we do is that once we have done this in one country, with a standard scenario, we go and we do it in another country. Ideally, again, intelligence in NATO country Estonia and intelligence in NATO country, let's say United States, should be thinking in a same pattern when it comes to a scenario event, but they don't. So again, where the differences are the biggest, we can actually go and address the problem and measure the problem, and start to bring the picture a little bit together. So that was in a nutshell what we do with those security exercises, how we address the important problem of strategic issues in cybersecurity. I hope it was sort of at least a little bit helpful of showing you what is going in the heads of the strategic decision makers, which is also a great source of problems in cybersecurity, which is, by the way, recognized recently by NATO. NATO had a summit in Wales, and in the Wales final declaration, what is said very, very nicely is that in addition to the technology problem in cybersecurity, we definitely need to deal with the human problem at all the levels, including strategic. So thank you very much. Sure, if you have time and yeah. Oh, all those issues are out there, and by the way, this is the methodology that allows to test those proposals that have been put forward, and it is a problem. Some of those laws do not work, and there are many initiatives that are out there, and there are many, and again, challenge is how to build a solution. One of the things that doesn't work, it was enacted, I think, in 2008 and 2009 already in the EU, is the obligation to notify about incidents in the private sector. It doesn't work. Nobody does it. It just simply doesn't work. It's a regulation that doesn't work. Nobody in the private sector is interested. Finns are saying that we are ignoring it deliberately. We're never going to do that. We're not going to share with some EU bureaucracy what is our private sector suffering. But to actually uncover those patterns would be useful and beneficial. And it's not, I mean, as a security professional, I'm not so much interested about, how much a particular Finnish company X is suffering, or what are the patterns that play there. But I think we should be strategically looking at those patterns. And again, software comes to play here. And one of my favorite problems and actually solutions that is great is the mindshare software, the anonymization software. So I think we should be looking at that direction. How can we anonymize data so that it would be actually interesting, sort of game theoretically interesting, to share it. To share confidential security information, and this is again here the secret and public. We sometimes private companies say this is very private. All the measures and all the privacy issues, the privacy dilemma is always there, and the governments can do a lot of things and they can collect a lot of data without the agreement. I mean, there are the fight against botnets, a good dilemma. To fight against botnets, the most effective way, which we have seen now in recent years, is to actually go and take over the botnets by government action. Now, if you have those voluntary political botnets, where you have a website up and say, you can join electronic jihad by simply infecting your computer with that particular software and let your computer do your work for you. The question is, do we have let's say, if it's not electronic jihad, let's say if it's a Greenpeace. And it's just a computer to, a chain of computers to put together enough computing power. Would that action be legitimate? And then we have the whole government issues, demilitarization of cyberspace. China, Russia, Belarus, all those countries are extremely well behind it. And when we talk about the rules, one of the things that we always say during those exercises is let's not enact any rules because we don't understand the problem yet properly. We don't understand. We are going to make the iPhone mistake that the Symantec made. It's too early. We simply need to exercise and play through the scenarios. I'm very much for deregulation here because I think we do not have intellectual capacity enough to come up with meaningful regulations in this area. There are some things that we should follow, but let's not over-regulate because what happens when we put, and again another dilemma, if we put too many limits on our governments to actually do stuff, then our governments probably are going to follow that. Latvian government is probably going to follow that. But there are a number of governments that definitely are going to ignore that. And so what we are creating is, if you look outside that window, there's the perfect example of bus lane. In Estonia, you can draw bus lanes overnight to the street and look at what is going on there. There are people are crowding. There are three free lanes, but people are politely crowding behind each other. Just because somebody has decided to draw a bus lane there. I worked in Colombia, I worked in Georgia, I worked in Azerbaijan. In those countries, that would never work. I mean, people, if there's a free lane, they would just go there and drive. If we are putting out those limiting regulations, we are actually drawing bus lanes for bad countries. That would simply misuse them, and we would be lining like those cars over there. Probably. I think so, yeah.
So it's getting better or worse? Because technology is getting better for sure.
I think people are getting better too. And there's always, when this 2007 happened, for instance, in Estonia, we got lots of people, again, including myself, who suddenly started, although I did it way earlier before, already in 1998, but we got a lot of people who suddenly started to talk about cybersecurity without actually learning it at school. The trend is ever growing. After Ed Snowden, after WikiLeaks, after all those things that have happened, we get lots of people who talk about cybersecurity, and we have those, useless idiots and useful idiots. And the issue is how can we, turn those raving, wild, really dangerous idiots to useful idiots? And just to put it extremely bluntly. And I think, at least we believe this is the way to go. This is just, force them to go through those dilemmas so that they can actually understand some of the implications. So if they say that I'm going to classify this, if I'm going to save that hospital or not, then they understand that they cannot do it fast. Or if they say that we are going to do it in the government level, then you cannot probably get that. Or in a national level, then they have the problem of, international cooperation, which is inevitable. Opening the eyes, being evangelical.
Thank you very much. I think it's time for everyone to get some breaks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.